Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I want to show you behind the scenes of my sound design process. I've used this process for my plugins like Vintage Fire, Hermes, aka Hermesynth, aka TBD, and now our new plugin called Hercules. So I'll show you guys, the thought processes that goes into my sound design. I have my own style, I would say my own kind of preference, which is more hip hop leaning. So let's get into it. So before we get into the actual process though, I want to show you guys 221 weeks ago, I don't know how many years ago that was, back in 2020, I went up to Canada with Jacob to the Synth Palace, it's called, to record all these vintage synths you guys see in the back. So they had Jupiter, they had the Mellotron, the 808, they had a mini Moog, they had, or no, maybe not a mini Moog. They had, I think they did, but what is it called? A Moog 1, I think it's called. They had Casio keyboards that are rare. Just a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll play a little bit of this clip. Now I'm turning the audio off, but it was me and my best friend Jacob from Sauceware Audio. You guys know him from there. So there's a ton of synths in this room. So we recorded super rare sounds. They even had a chroma and a PPG there. It was just super rare. So I'll kind of skip ahead, but here's the Moog 1 that had a lot of dope sounds in it. The OBX, the PPG, one of my favorites. So this is the chroma, super rare. That thing is a beast. So these are the sounds I used to build out a lot of the source sounds for my plugin called Hercules. So that stuff you can't get online. You can't get in a plugin. It just sounds impeccable. When you hear the chroma for real in real life, you understand it's a big difference. Okay, and that's me playing the, so you guys can go on my Instagram and look at all the clips. I just wanted to show you guys looking to the past. So my approach to sound design is really just starting from a new canvas every single time. So for example, there's a new plugin in FL called the Kepler XO. Actually, I forgot, we're in FL 21, so that's in the newer version, so we're not going to use that one. But I like to try to start from ground zero. So let's go to Salter, for example, super slept on plugin. And what I'll do is I'll go initiate the plugin. Now some plugins have this, but if you go to defaults, load up what's called the default patch, it should be a sawtooth. And what I do from this point is I'll get into a playable zone. So let me lower my buffer here. And then I'll just start playing stuff with the basic sound. Okay, so we're not sound designing just yet, but this is part of it. So what I'll do is I'll perform something. Okay, so basic chords, nothing crazy. The reason I do that is so that now when I sound design, I can hit play and shape the sound as I'm listening to it being used in a real world scenario. A lot of people, they sound design, which is fine. They'll make a sound and they'll kind of demo it every now and again. And that's a fine process, but the reason I don't do that a lot is because I like to hear my sounds in context of other sounds, in context of making beats. Like how would it actually sound in a mix? So here's where I'm going to get started. So the first thing is just understanding how important effects are. So I like to start with effects too, or sometimes. So I'll turn on the reverb here and we'll make that decay curvature long. Turn on delay. We're also going to add chorus here. So sometimes this chorus is glitchy, so I have to open up the browser like that. And see, I can't move that knob until I open up the browser. And that changes the sound dramatically, just simply adding effects. So now I'm going to start shaping the actual sound. Okay, let's use the filter. This is one of the most audible effects you can use when building a sound. So let's mess with this filter, and we're going to use this envelope to shape this filter movement. So I'm going to turn it to its lowest point, turn up resonance so I can hear the movement. And we're going to use what's called the filter envelope amplitude to control the filter. Let's give it a shorter decay so that it basically goes down over time. And now we have a really unique sound. Now here the LFO, we could use this to control different things like the cutoff, the frequency. Let's control it, the frequency. Let's turn up the LFO amount. And now you can hear the pitch moving up and down. So let's change the speed now that we can hear the actual LFO. And then we'll pull back the amplitude, which is like the mix level. And now you can barely tell it's in the sound. Let's turn up the sound a little bit. And now let's go to the source sound, which is this section here. Polyphony, we have the octave. I think it adds an octave lower. Not sure that function there, but let's add more voices here. And let's detune the voices. And let's open up the panning, which makes it more stereo. And now we can go back and turn off certain things like chorus and reverb and delay. Let's turn off the delay. So this is the sound without the effects. That's why effects are so important. Just added a vibe. So it needs all those effects. That's why I work from the top down most of the time with sound design. I don't start with the sound and then try to add a bunch of effects to make it cool. I start with the effects first and then go back to the sound most of the time. Now from here, there's nothing really that I want to change. Maybe transposing an octave just to see what it would sound like raised an octave. That really didn't do anything for the sound. And then lastly, I might mess with noise to fill out the sound a little bit more. So some of these knobs aren't working. Gotta open up the browser. So that noise just adds more impact sound pretty much. And we didn't do anything crazy on this one, but we could also modulate the cutoff filter. I'm not gonna do that for this sound. And now what I might do here is copy this sound and clone it and then start from scratch again using the same exact notes, or I might do another run. So let's say we're building a melody. Let's just repeat that basic melody. Okay, so notice the pitch sounds different, and that's because of all of those pitch changes that we did with the chorus and the LFO. They don't sound tuned. Okay, so let's start off with the things that affect the pitch, like chorus and the LFO. I think we had it on the frequency, and we could turn up the amplitude a little bit, and I think it was at 3 or so. Now for this one, we're going to use monophonic mode, so it's one note at a time. Also, they have an arpeggio built in here, so let's do up mode 3 octaves. So here I'm going to start quantizing the notes so that everything's played. So now that's our top line and rhythm, and the other sound is playing the chord structure. So now I can mess with this filter. Now I'm going to use the LFO over the cutoff, so it adds more movement. Or we could use it on the panning to make the arpeggio feel like it's moving around. Now we can also use the amp envelope. My favorite thing to do with the arpeggio is mess with the decay in the release, so it makes a long tail type sound. Now this one doesn't do it the way I expected. So this arpeggio is pretty hard. I'm not sure the envelope overrides that in this plugin, but in plugins like Sylenth, for example, you could have the release. That's for a different tutorial. So long story short, this should make the notes fade a little bit more. In other synths, it does that. For this synth, it doesn't. And then I'll go, okay, we got a cool sound. Let's see what other, let me see which one. Okay, which other third-party plugins or stock plugins or effects plugins we can add to it. So let's slow down the arpeggio with some Gross speed, let's go to momentary. Let's go to half speed. And then let's pull back the time knob. Then I'll mess with stuff like kilohertz reverser. And here's where I get into just weirder effects, usually time-based or pitched-based effects. It's a little too slow for me. Now I have a pretty cool sound. Now from here I might add reverb to the entire sound, like the Better Maker is a great reverb, for example, the BM60, and I might add it on full mix level so that it's going through just the reverb effect. So turn the wet level up, the mix level. And now it's more of a canvas of a sound. So again, I like the sound design with multiple sounds stacked up to see how they would actually work in a real context. Now let's take this same chord progression. Let's clone it down, and you could use different plugins. I'm just using the same plugin, so it's not complicated here. We're going to paste the chord progression in. Now what I'm going to do here is take all the bottom notes and pull them down an octave. Start working on the bass sound here. Now this one I want a lot of resonance on the bass. Let's pull it down to one voice. It's also at a sub level. Now this sub, we're going to see which octave we want. So here's what it sounds like. Let's take off some of these. Now reverb on a bass, you wouldn't naturally do that, but this reverb sounds good on this sound. Even delay sounded pretty good because it's playing a slower bass. Now if that were playing a faster bass, I wouldn't use delay. Then I would say, how do I make this more sinister? Let's try more sub level. Switch it to a square wave. Let's drop it an octave. And we're at a really low octave already, so let's pull this up. And now we can hear that sub layer. Let's pull everything down an octave. Now it gets kind of muddy towards the low frequencies. That's something I would do to mess with the bass. Now let's hear it in context. Okay, so my melody kind of stopped. So now at this point, the picture is done. I would save all these presets. And another thing you could do, which is a different approach, is add what's called a layer plugin in FL Studio. Highlight all, you could hit shift to highlight multiple and set them as children. Now what this means is now you can play the layer and it plays all of those sounds all at once. Now, what most people don't realize is that everything's just playing like the same octave. And it's tricky when you have a monophonic sound. So I think the bass is monophonic. Let's turn that off. And so is this sound here. So let's say what you could do is go to SAR or whatever plugin. Go to the plugin settings, go to the wrench tool, and then right click on these octaves. And now when you play a note, the bass is playing an actual bass note. And the other notes are playing regular notes. So that's good for if you're playing one note at a time. and you want everything stacked in its own octave. So again, that means we're playing the bass in its natural spot when we play this layer. Again, you have to determine if you want it monophonic or not on the plugin itself. This is just triggering all those sounds. So that's how I would think of it. It'd be cool too if we had this as like a keyboard split. I'm not sure how to actually do that. Trigger one of the children in sequential order. So let's see what this does. I have no idea what that button does. Crossfade, cross. I don't know what these buttons do. Random. So I guess it just picks a random sound each time. That could be cool for like round robin type stuff. Okay, so sequential wasn't doing it when I was doing it, but now it triggers each synth every time I press a note. So this would be a creative way. Now we have a really unique sound that you couldn't get just by playing the sounds. So the only thing is that arpeggio sounds kind of weird on the sequential mode. So what I'll do is I'll just put the bass back in its normal octave so it doesn't play that low tone. So now we can play chords. Even the bass is still low, so let's go up an octave or two. Let's take off the arp for a second. It's throwing me off. So that sounds fine. What I'll do temporarily is take off this arp just so it doesn't confuse my brain. We'll turn this bass down. So this will be a whole nother sound combining these sounds. So one of these sounds is like off a little bit. I think it's that bass. All right, so that's how I would think about sound design, using the best parts of each sound, like each sound by itself, and then the best part of each sound combined into this thing called a layer. And that would give me the next level of the sound. Okay, so this seems to be a monophonic switch somewhere I'm not missing. Or a voice max. Yeah, polyphony, that's probably why. Okay, my CPU is gonna go pretty high right now, so I'm gonna have to end this video pretty soon because I have the polyphony up really high. Now we have a completely new sound. Okay, so that's how you get unique sounds. Combining all those ideas into one, that would be the last layer. We can take this further. Let's do it with a third-party plugin, just to show you guys like different ways to think. So again, I like to start from scratch because it just makes me think different every time. Let's start at Serum, and let's go to the, now what you could do in Serum is import what are called wavetables. So look up Serum wavetables. We're going to do that same technique, record. Now in Serum, I don't use the arpeggio function very often because it's kind of hard for me to use it. So I do less arpeggio stuff in here. So let's record some kind of melody or chords. Okay, so that we have the chords. So I know it sounds just like a bunch of mess. Okay, so what I'll do here is I usually mess with the effects last in Serum. That's just my workflow in Serum. Let's up the voices to 8. Detune them for a wide sound. Usually I'll mess with the filter. So I don't use the normal filters most of the time. Going to be over here in the miscellaneous for the distorted comb low pass filter. And then we'll use an modulation over this, like an LFO, for example. Actually, let's use an envelope. So I'll use the different envelope, like envelope 2, give it a short decay so it has movement in the sound. Most real instruments have movement in the sound. Think about when you pluck a guitar, it goes down, and then it fades. A piano, dun, then it fades. Any kind of stringed instrument, you usually pluck it and then it fades. Even if you're using a bow on a violin, for example, it goes, it's more sustained, but then at some point it fades. So I like to have these things that kind of fade something out. So let's set the low point where the pointer points, and then the max value is the blue. See if the comb filter does anything. I also like to use envelopes to move stuff around. See if that adds anything. It feels like a phaser. And it moves at the same time, same rate and same speed as the envelope 2 for the cutoff. So that it's all synced up. And then we can get like further and further into the weeds about everything. But let's use an LFO for the detune, and let's set the range to a very small range. And let's set the LFO 2 to control LFO 1, the rate. So let's see how that's gonna turn out. So the targets, I usually go to the matrix for this complex stuff. So I want LFO 2 to control LFO 1, the speed of it. And then we'll just set the range. And now you can see that moving over time. Now this is a very subtle thing to hear. So I'll increase the range. Now we have like a moving detune that is not predictable. And I believe we can use the noise. Let's see if we could, I don't think they call it noise. I think they call it noise. Yeah, here it is. Noise oscillator. We want that to control the fine tuning of the actual envelope so that it's random. See how this works. Okay, so I forgot to turn the oscillator on. Okay, so it has to be on. So now the noise, the randomness will control this fine tune pitch, which means it will like wobble very subtly over time. And then we can set the range in the mod matrix. So let's pull that range in. So it's not just like going up crazy. Let's take off the comb filter effect. Let's actually do the opposite. Let's give envelope 3 an attack curvature. Just want to hear what this sounds like going slow up. There Never mind. It sounds more like a sound effect. Let's try a normal low pass filter. Just cleaner. And then I'll move into the effects. So one of the effects people overlook is the multi-band compressor. This is basically OTT built into the plugin. So it's more EDM. Adds like an EDM type of smack sound. We used up all our envelopes. Another thing people could do is use the coarse pitch and then drag an envelope up here to make it like go up or down an octave as the transient. For now, we're just going to leave that out. But I would normally do that. I guess you could do it with an LFO technically. So let's do LFO 3. We're going to drag this over top of the coarse pitch. And then we're going to set it to some type of speed. And then we don't want this to loop. Let's set it to an envelope. So now it's going to fade down. Let's crank up the range. Or we could do it the opposite way. So the tuning can go up. Let's flip it. It's kind of hard to understand bipolar flipping it. So now it's going to go up in pitch instead of down. So that's how you make these cool sounds. Now it's really hard to target where you land. That's the only tricky part, is to know exactly how to go with the range. Sure, there's a way to know, but for me, I do it by ear. That's another cool thing. So now when I hit a key, it goes up an octave. Creates like a Hoover type of sound. Creating like a tape stop effect. So now we have a unique sound. It's like, where are you going to get that type of sound? Okay, so, and then we could add a bunch of effects to that sound, but that's my sound design process. I like to start from scratch and just think about sound in pieces and just keep iterating over the sound until it creates a unique signature. That and just having a great sound source. So thank you guys. Hercules will be out soon. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/Hercules. I don't have the webpage up just yet, but that's where it will be in the future. So I'll catch you guys there. Peace.